Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. My name is Audra. If you are new here, I'm so glad that you're coming along for the ride. I am so excited about today's video. This is something that I've honestly been putting off for years, and I am just getting back into it. So obviously you guys know by the title of the video that I am going to be bringing you through making sourdough. This is something that I feel like has gotten very trendy in the past couple years, especially since the pandemic. And that's exactly what happened for me. I'll give you guys a little bit of history in a minute here, but I'm going to be bringing you guys through start to finish. I started recording last night because sourdough, for me, the way that I bake it, or my schedule, I guess you could say, is I have a 2-day process. I feel like it's always a 2-day process in some aspects. Some people start the night before and then bake it the next day, or some people do most of it on day 1 and then bake on day 2. I'll get into that as well when we go through a little bit on the process. But if you are new to sourdough, I just want to start off by saying you can do this. This is not hard. Sourdough, it takes time, and I think that's why it's intimidating. Is it seems like this big elaborate process. You guys, it is such a basic process. Like, it's really, really simple. Honestly, I feel like the hardest part is just getting your starter going, and that I know also is what intimidates people, but you just have to be patient. That's the biggest thing. It seems like it might be an exact science. It's really not. I've learned that, and I feel like you want to start with really exact measurements and a really exact process, but as you get used to baking with it, you realize it doesn't have to be so black and white. Obviously, there's the general concept that you want to stick to, but I don't want you to be intimidated. Okay, so going into this, I don't want to scare you. This is so easy. You need to have patience and you need the time to do it. A little bit about my personal history with sourdough. Full transparency, I have not made sourdough in probably at least a year. Sorry if you guys can hear my dogs playing upstairs. If you're new here, I have 4 golden retrievers. And they're always causing a ruckus. So anyway, they are banished to the upstairs, which I don't know if that's worse or better than down here, but don't mind that. You'll hear them thumping around from time to time. Girls! Anyway, my history of sourdough. So I'm sure a lot of people have a very similar backstory with sourdough to me. I actually got into it like during the pandemic, towards the end of the pandemic, I think it was. My now sister-in-law had started it with some friends down in Texas when she lived there. And Jonathan and I, who we were just dating at the time. We weren't even engaged, so just dating. We went home to California. My husband's from California, and they had these sourdough starters, and we were like, oh, interesting. Like, I guess I had heard of sourdough, but didn't really know anything about it. And the history of it is actually really cool, which I'm not going to get super into, but basically it started as a friendship bread kind of thing, which if you guys have those old church cookbooks from our grandparents' era where the grannies all put in their favorite recipes and everybody gets the cookbook, there's stuff like that in there where it's a friendship cookies or friendship bread. And that's kind of how this started for my sister-in-law. And don't quote me, Annalise, you can correct me at any time if you're watching this, but basically all these friends would share the starter. And so you have this one starter and you're discarding, and feeding it. And when you discard it, you can, or even when you don't discard it, you can just break off little pieces and give it to people, and then they can start their own bread. But the thing is every single person's bread is going to be a little bit different because of the yeast that's in your house. Again, I won't get into that yet, but so she had gotten this sourdough starter from one of her friends, and then she came from Texas to California and again gave some to her family, and we made bread. And you guys, there is nothing, absolutely nothing like sourdough that is fresh out of the oven, sliced up with just butter on it. Honestly, even without butter, it is so good. Jonathan and I can literally eat an entire loaf of sourdough fresh out of the oven, just cutting pieces off and just eating it with butter. It's so good. But the extra added bonus of sourdough is that it's really gentle on your gut. So I know nowadays a lot of people are sensitive to gluten, celiacs, autoimmune, just overall gut issues, leaky gut, whatever. Because of the fermentation process that sourdough goes through, it breaks up those gluten molecules, for lack of a better term. And I don't know the exact science behind this, but basically it makes it so that it's really gentle on your gut. And then there's probiotics in sourdough, again, because of the fermentation. Sorry if you hear the ball squeaking upstairs. So it's such a healthy form of bread. And I know bread gets a bad rep in like the like diet industry, like I don't know, like society basically is like, oh, bread is bad, carbs are bad. No, they're not. No, it's not. But sourdough just has those added benefits. And you guys, sourdough has 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt. And then if you want to add extra like things in to zhuzh it up a little bit, you can. But 3 ingredients. You know exactly what's going in that bread when it goes into your body. So that is just so cool to me. And just like honestly baffles me every time I'm making any kind of bread, how simple it is. Literally 3 to 4 ingredients. Some use like, you know, an added yeast, but this is literally starter, flour, water, salt. That is it. And the starter, water and flour. That's all it is. So just so crazy to me. So anyway, back to my sister-in-law. So she really got us hooked on sourdough because it's so good. It is really, I think, a fun process. It's very calming for me, just going through all the steps, and like it's just nice like having that end goal that is going to be like so delicious, and like knowing that's what's coming from all this work you're putting in. So I came back and decided to start my own starter, and I think I mentioned this, but no matter like everywhere that you go, sourdough is going to be a little bit different. The starters are going to be different because of the different wild yeast that's in the air. So I think that's like so cool. But so I started my own starter probably about 2 years ago. Hello, Miss Ma'am. What do you think you're doing? Did you escape from prison? Did you escape from prison? Okay, well, let's get you entertained again. Can you go back up and play? This is like having toddlers, you guys. Honestly, take a drink every time I have to pause this video to go put my dogs away. They do have a really good time watching this video. Anyway, okay. What was I talking about? I was talking about getting started with my sourdough starter. So about 2 years ago, I started my own sourdough starter from scratch. I didn't use anyone else's. I've actually never done that, but I would be curious to try that, where you like take someone else's starter, a little bit of it, and start, you know, building it off of that. Anyway, so I started my own starter and started baking, and it was just like so fun for me. And I was doing it probably like every other weekend, you know, once a month, and then it kind of fizzled out. And the nice thing about a sourdough starter is you can just put it in the fridge. If you're like going through a busy phase and you're like, I'm not gonna have time to make bread, just put your starter in your fridge and it slows that fermentation process down. So just a little side note, you don't always have to be like feeding it every single day, twice a day, however you work. If you're going through a busy phase, stick it in the fridge, feed it like once a week maybe. I have gone longer than that. And if you decide like, oh, starter's been in the fridge, I'm getting ready to bake in like a week or two, take it out of the fridge and then you can build it back up again by feeding it every day, twice a day, whatever works for your lifestyle. So I kind of fizzled out of my sourdough about a year ago. I mean, it was about a year ago that I last made my last round of sourdough. So I'm kind of getting back into this with you guys. So if you are like trying this for the first time, not that I'm trying it for the first time, but I am getting back into it again, and I just wanted to record it for you guys in case you were also getting back into it or just starting fresh. So, and now I decided like it's winter time. This is the perfect time to bake bread. You know, I don't have a lot going on. I'm in between my busy season with weddings. So I'm like, let's just record this and have fun with it. I have, you know, kind of an open weekend, which is even without having weddings. I'm a wedding planner for those of you that are new. Even though I don't have weddings right now, I still am like have events and stuff on the weekend. So I figured I have a weekend off. let's do it. So that's a little bit of my background. So started with my sister-in-law and kind of my husband's family, and then now here we are getting back into it. Okay, so I want to next walk you guys through the sourdough process, what to expect, the scheduling of it. I briefly touched on it being a 2-day process. I feel like this is pretty typical. There are a couple of different baking schedules that you can do. There's the baker's schedule, there's the next day bake. I don't even remember which one exactly I do, but I have stuck to this pretty consistently throughout my whole sourdough experience. I have veered off and done like a couple other recipes and they never turned out great. So I'm just sticking with this like tried and true one. And I will link this if I can find it. The recipe that I use, I found from the New York Times, which they adapted it from, it's like a tartine bread recipe. And they adapted it from like a way long, like historical old time recipe. And I just have it saved in my notes. And so I just refer back to that. And it has always turned out so great. So this recipe that I'm using is actually a 70% hydration recipe. I want to talk about hydration really briefly. I don't even know a ton about experimenting with hydration. I know a lot of more experienced bakers will try a higher hydration level. Personally, I have found if you are starting out with sourdough, stick to a 70% hydration recipe, which again, I will try to link this recipe or just paste it in the comments or the description box. This is a very easy dough / hydration level to work with, in my opinion. I could see where it would be very intimidating upping that hydration. So basically what the hydration is it is the ratio of water to your flour. So I have a 70% ratio of flour to my water. So I have not a lower hydration. That's like a pretty average hydration. And then as you up your hydration, your dough gets stickier. You have more of the, I guess, like bigger open holes in your bread, if that makes sense. And it's a little more like artisan feeling, just a little bit different, more special bread, I guess you could say. There's just a little bit more interest to it. Again, I have not experimented much. I do want to try after this round going into more of like maybe like a 75 to 80%. I don't think it's recommended to go over like an 80 to 83, 85% if you're feeling, brave. But this is a 70% hydration level. It is very easy. It always turns out the same. It's very predictable, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. It always turns out the same. I have always gotten fantastic loaves out of this, never had issues. So that's why I'm using, sorry, the dog hair on my face, per usual. That's why I'm using this recipe to introduce you guys to sourdough for an easier process, something that I know what to expect. And personally, I have enough of my own experience to just be able to like troubleshoot little things here and there. So that is why I wanted to use this 70% hydration recipe, just because I know what to expect with this recipe. I have always gotten great loaves out of this. Never has it failed me. And again, as long as you follow the steps and like kind of know what to look for, I think this is going to work out really well for you. Okay, we're going to talk about the process now. For real this time. I'm putting on this apron because it can get a little messy. I mean, this first step is not too bad, but basically, as I mentioned, this is a 2-day process typically. So I have my recipe split into day 1 and day 2, basically, because I tend to make sourdough in the same schedule all the time, every time I make it. So the first step, which I recorded this last night, so this was already previously done prior to this, and then I let it set overnight. So day 1, you are going to want to take your active starter. First, let's talk about what is an active starter. So the starter is where you start building the base of your sourdough. The starter is basically what births all of that yummy flavor in your bread, and you need to start it ahead of time. So yes, the baking is a 2-day process. Your starter, I would give it at least a week to a week and a half if you are starting from scratch, especially if you are building your own starter, if that makes sense, not like taking some from somebody else. So if you are making your own starter from scratch, fresh flour, fresh water, just putting it together in a jar, you're gonna wanna give it at least a week to a week and a half before you want to bake. I know that's really, really hard because the waiting is like, oh, I just want it now, but trust me, it's worth it. Just give it the time. And then after you have that established starter, then you can bake whenever you want. So you're gonna take flour and water. Personally, I start out with a smaller amount. I did, I think, 25 grams of water, 25 grams of flour, and I mix that together and you let it set in like a warmer area of your home. I like to put mine in my microwave with the door open with the light on, and that provides like a lot of warmth and a really ideal environment for your starter to grow and, you know, expand. It is the middle of winter here. Granted, our temperatures are much higher than they should be at this time of year, but the fermentation process will be really slow if it's cold. So you want to keep it nice and toasty warm. You don't want to like turn on the oven and put it in there. That'll like kill everything off. Don't do that. But just a warmer region. You can even just put it in the microwave and close the door. Like you don't need the light on, but I do like to have the light on just for a little added warmth when I'm really trying to grow that starter. So 25 grams of water, 25 grams of flour. Then I let it set. I stir that together. I let it set for a day. The next day, I will take out about half of that, leave about a tablespoon of the starter. So that is what you're going to use as like your base. Toss the rest or put it in another jar to use as like for discard recipes and things like that. Then that little tablespoon of starter, leave it in a jar and then add 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of warm water. Stir that together, let it set, and keep doing that once or twice a day. If you want it to be a little bit faster growing, feed it twice a day. That's what I did this time around, and it worked really, really well for just getting it active and alive a lot faster. Again, it's colder here than, you know, if I'm baking in the summer, so the warmer temperatures help, but giving it that extra food just keeps it going, moving really, really quickly. Then, as you kind of keep feeding, you'll notice after a few days, your starter will start getting really like puffy and bubbly, and it'll start growing as after you feed it. So that is what we want to see. We want to see the bubbles. We want to see it growing, getting like puffy and really aerated and like stringy almost. If you kind of like move it around, it'll be like stringy. That is what we want. So after about a week to a week and a half of feeding your starter, it should be really nice and active. So this is where you need some patience. People will, you know, go do it for like 3 days and they're like, oh, nothing's happening. That's okay. That is normal. It takes a little bit of time. There's a lot of factors that could be adding in to it taking a little bit more time. Could be temperatures. It could be the kind of flour you're using. You want to use as fresh of flour as possible. And if it's really, really slow, really lagging, try, instead of feeding it with like a normal all-purpose flour, try using bread flour, or especially like wheat flour or rye flour. I personally use whole wheat flour and it works really well. There's just extra proteins in there that those yeasty beasties, as I call them, really, really like, and then it helps speed up your activity in your starter. So if you're really struggling to get that nice activity, the nice bubbles, try using either a blend of all-purpose and whole wheat or just whole wheat. So that's what I did with this starter. It worked really well and just helps kind of speed up that activity process. So once your starter is, or you think your starter is ready to use for baking, you can test if it is ready. And there's a really, really easy test to give you insight on like how your starter is doing, and that is the float test. I use it every now and then, although I kind of know what to look for in an active starter, but I did do the float test last night just to see if we are good to go, and sure enough, we are good to go. So what you want to do is you want to take about a tablespoon of your active starter into a cup of room temperature or like slightly warm water, drop it in, and if it floats on the top, you are good to go. If it sinks to the bottom, you want to give it more time to ferment. Feed it again, and then just kind of see how you do. Kind of try that every day then to get a good float on that bit of starter. So if you have gotten a successful float, that means we are ready to bake, baby, okay? So this brings us to step number 1 in the sourdough bread baking process. That is making your leaven. or levain. There's, I think, different ways to pronounce it. This is what I do to start off on day number 1 or night number 1. So I did this last night, and I took about a tablespoon of that starter, put it in a bowl of warm water, and really like dispersed it with my hands. So you want it to kind of like dissolve into that water. I use a tablespoon of my starter, and then I mixed it with 200 grams of warm water. And then after that, I add 200 grams of, I did half whole wheat flour and half all-purpose flour. And you're gonna mix that into like a loose dough, kind of. You're gonna cover it with a towel, and then you're gonna put that in, again, a warm environment overnight. So I put it in my microwave overnight to rise and get really active and bubbly. So basically you're making like another starter from your previous starter. And then that is what you're gonna use to bake your bread. And you can use this as your new and old starter, if that makes sense. So you still have some of that old starter, which is where the yeast foundation is from. And then you're making a new, like, bigger starter basically to start your bread, and then you'll use a portion of that to make your actual loaves, and then the rest of it can be saved for your next starter as you're going through the process. It'll make more sense as you're like walking through and like following a recipe, but just giving you like a high level intro to that. And then basically I left that in my microwave all night, and actually I'm gonna pull that out and show you guys what we've got. And then we're gonna get started baking. So here is my leaven. It's been sitting in my microwave. And now I do notice a difference when I make whole wheat versus just all-purpose flour, but I've done both and both work really well. So my bubbles have kind of died down now. I mean, it's past its peak, which is fine, but I'm gonna do another float test. This has been sitting for 12 hours, okay? That is very important. You wanna give it 12 hours. That's why I tend to do it overnight, to sit and ferment and get, you know, all the yeast established in that leaven. And then you're gonna take this and use it as the starter for your bread. Okay, that brings us to baking day. So this is the big day. This is where you're gonna wanna make sure that you're home, you're ready to do the thing. I mean, you can still do stuff. It's not like you're just sitting and watching paint dry all day, but you wanna make sure you're home just for like the proper steps and whatnot. So we are going to take 200 grams of our leaven, which is like our starter, and add 700 grams of warm water, okay? So remember, this is 70% hydration recipe. So I'm taking 700 grams of water, and then after I mix that with the 200 grams of starter, we'll take 1,000 grams of flour. So 70 divided by 1,000 times 100 equals 70%, if that makes sense. I don't know if I actually went in depth on that with the hydration, but the ratio of our water to flour. So I'm gonna get started on making the dough. This is so exciting. I can't believe it's been like a year since I've done this, but I'm gonna show you guys what it'll look like in the different steps. And then hopefully the rest of the process is a little bit quicker to walk you through. I just wanted to give you guys a good background. This is gonna be a very in-depth video, so it's gonna be a long one. So buckle up. We're making some sourdough. So a couple key tools that you will want for your sourdough journey. Number one is a food scale. This is a cheapy, like $10 food scale, and she has served me well. This is super important because in bread baking, you really want to go precise in your measurements. So grams, not cups, not tablespoons. We're doing grams, okay? It's a much more precise way of cooking. And you guys, I know, everybody's like, can you just convert it to cups? No. There is a reason why so many people say use a food scale. Use a food scale when you're baking, you guys, especially when you're baking sourdough. It's gonna make your life easier. You're gonna use less dishes. Don't come in the comments and tell me, can you convert it to cups and tablespoons? No, we don't do that, okay? All right, so food scale, that is gonna be number one. And there are other tools that you can get. You know, you can get the Bannetons, you can get I have a scoring tool, but honestly, have some bowls, have some towels, some clean towels, and you're good to go, okay? And then obviously your flour. And I will say another tool that is very helpful is a Dutch oven. You can also use just like, you know, most people have like a big pot for like boiling pasta. As long as it has a lid, that'll work too. But a cast iron Dutch oven works really, really well. I have 2 of them, and that just has worked really well. You can get them pretty inexpensive, Target, Amazon. You can buy a Le Creuset, but you don't gotta spend that much money, okay? I have one from Target. I also got gifted one at my bridal shower in last spring, and both of them work great. I did not spend $300 or $600 or whatever on the Le Creuset. You don't need that. Just any good old Dutch oven will work, and that's what we're using today. Okay, so we have got our leaven, and I'm going to take just a little container. I'm gonna turn on my food scale and zero it out with my dish on there. This always reminds me of like science class when I was in middle school. I feel like this kind of vibe was going on a lot. Okay, so I'm going to get just a little spatula, and we're gonna weigh out 200 grams of this leaven, okay? So this is basically your new starter. She is active. I honestly don't even remember how much 200 grams is, but it's not a ton. Okay, there's 56, so. Okay, that's 113, so that's about half of what we need. Oh, there we go, 200. Okay, so this is the leaven that we're gonna use. Now, I'm gonna get another bowl to transfer it into, and we're gonna do 700 grams of warm water. Not hot, not cold, warm water, okay? Our yeast likes warmth, okay? So do I. All right, let me get my very special bowl. I don't know if anyone else is like this, but this is my favorite item in my kitchen. I don't know what it is. I love this bowl so much, and it's from Target. It's a Hearth and Hand bowl, and I really wanted to go back and get multiples, but of course they don't carry this specific one anymore. But I love it so much, and we're using it for sourdough. So, all right, we're gonna put our bowl on our scale, zero it out. Actually, add your leaven, and then we'll zero it out. This is where having a food scale saves you a lot of dishes. Obviously, I divided the leaven into its own little thing, but I could have put this bowl on first. And it just saves you all the measuring cups and all the craziness. 200, all right. Now, we're gonna take whatever vessel you wanna use. I'm grabbing this bowl just because it's here. I'm gonna zero that out, and then I'm gonna go measure 700 grams of warm water, and we're gonna mix that in. Okay, there we are, 700 grams of water. Okay, so this is where it gets a little messy. I'm gonna take off my rings, actually. You're going to stir this to disperse it, very similar to what you did with the leaven. When you're doing that, you kind of just use your hands, stir it around until it all dissolves into that water. It doesn't take very long because, again, your starter that you're using, or the leaven, is going to be very aerated, and like there's lots of air tunnels and bubbles, and so it's not like you're using this like super dense thick dough. So there you guys can kind of see, turns it into this like milky water. Okay, now that this is all dissolved into the water, you're gonna add your flour. So this recipe calls for 900 grams of all-purpose flour or bread flour and 100 grams of whole wheat flour. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start with the whole wheat flour and then add the rest of the flour in. So this is a lot of flour, you guys. I think it usually ends up being, was it like 9 cups or something? 8 cups of flour. So you wanna make sure you have lots of flour, and the fresher the flour, the better, okay? That's gonna make sure you have that really good fermentation. All the yeast in there is gonna be really great, or all the proteins that the yeast can eat are gonna be really good. So I'm gonna start adding my flour, again by weight, so we're gonna zero it out. So every step you're gonna wanna zero out your scale. That can be really, really important. Otherwise, just do the math, but it's just easier for my brain to just zero out the scale. So I love King Arthur flour. I use pretty much solely King Arthur flour. I get mine from Costco. This is not from Costco, but my all-purpose and bread flour is from Costco. And my pizza dough flour and my 00 flour is also from them. So 100 grams of whole wheat flour. Okay, there we go. And 900 grams of all-purpose flour. So this is going to equal up to 1,000 grams of flour. So this is going to come together into what you will see termed or pegged as a shaggy dough. What does that mean? Think of when you see a shaggy dog. They kind of got like rough fur and it's all over the place and it's not super smooth, and that's kind of what your dough is going to look like. So it's going to be sticky. It's not going to be super smooth and pretty like you would think like a bread dough is. It's going to have different texture and ridges and things like that. That is okay. Eventually we will get a nice smooth dough, but that comes from the fermentation, from the gluten forming, all of that. So we're going to mix this together and then we'll come back and we'll show you what it looks like. Now, I do want to say, you can also use a KitchenAid mixer for this, but I'm just taking the very beginner level route, okay? Yes, this can be easily done with a KitchenAid mixer, but if you are literally starting bare bones and maybe don't have a KitchenAid mixer, you can do all of this with your hands, no problem, okay? Don't feel like you need a KitchenAid mixer. In fact, I think I've only used my KitchenAid mixer one time for sourdough. And like, yeah, it's fine and dandy. Maybe if you're like a mom, that would work really great, but trust me, you don't need it. You can do everything just fine with your hands. Okay, so here is our shaggy dough. Do you see what I mean though, you guys? It's not cute. It's really sticky. When you see this, you're gonna be like, what have I gotten myself into? It's all part of the process, okay? This is a trust the process kind of thing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover this in my handy dandy tea towel. I love these for sourdough. I got these in a pack of like 4 from Target. They're like $4, $6, something like that. And they're just super lightweight, like flimsy, but they're perfect. I love them and I think they're so cute. Anyway, irrelevant, but I'm gonna cover this, stick her back in the microwave for about anywhere from like 20 to 45 minutes. I'm actually gonna make some breakfast and I'm gonna let this sit, and then we're gonna start the next step, which is where you'll start kind of seeing the nice pretty dough come together. All right. Cardigan had to come off. It's getting a little warm, but our 45 minutes is up and I am going to add our salt and a little bit more water. So this is our next step. I'm gonna take her out of the microwave. Let's see what she looks like. All right, so remember, she's still shaggy, okay? So we are going to add our dough to the scale. We're gonna zero it out. And I forget exactly how much. Is it 25 milligrams? Or for 25 grams, I mean, of salt, 20 grams of fine sea salt, and 50 grams of warm water. So we got our scale zeroed out. I am just using Morton sea salt. You can use, I have this sea salt. I don't think this is enough. Maybe we should try that. I don't know. This is just easy to dissolve into it. You can use whatever kind of salt you want. I realize this is not like the healthiest salt, but So what we got, we're gonna use it. So 20 grams, and we're just gonna sprinkle. And I actually a lot of times add a little bit more than 20 grams. So I'm actually gonna add 25. Maybe. There we go. 25 grams of, sorry you guys couldn't even see that, of sea salt. And then we're gonna add 50 grams of warm water, right? 50 grams. And then we're gonna integrate that into the dough, and then we're gonna let it set again for another little while. So basically this is gonna make your dough kind of like separate a little bit. Just keep working it in. We'll get it there, okay? Just, again, trust the process. It's one of those things. Cool. Added too much. Okay, 50 grams. 50 grams of warm water. Okay, now we are going to incorporate that into our dough, okay? It's a little messy process, the whole mixing everything, but it's worth it. So we're gonna incorporate that all into our dough. Just really get that mixed in there really well. And this is where your dough will kind of, sorry the sounds, you guys, I get it, I know. It's where it's gonna start coming together, okay? It's gonna start being a little smoother, not so shaggy, not so sticky, but you really wanna make sure that you're getting it worked in. I'm gonna speed this up so you don't have to hear these nasty sound effects, but it's all part of the process. So, still a little shaggy, which is okay. We're gonna cover it with a tea towel. And again, we're gonna pop it back in the microwave for about 30 minutes. I'm gonna leave the door open this time with the light on, so it's a little bit warmer. You want a little bit warmer environment for this one. The first initial setting can be left in just room temperature if you want, but this one you want to be a little bit warmer if possible. So we're gonna let that set for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna start our stretch and folds. This is where the gluten strands form and your dough gets a little bit easier to work with. It gets softer, and basically what you'll do is you'll take it and you'll stretch it and kind of fold it over on itself 4 times. So you'll stretch and fold it over, and then you'll rotate your bowl, stretch, fold it over, but we're gonna let it set for 30 minutes, then we'll come back and we'll do that. Okay, we are back. We have let this sit for 30 minutes. Now we're gonna start our series of stretch and folds. Now, before you get started with this, my number 1 tip that is gonna make this so much less messy for you, wet your hands, okay? Some people say dip your hands in water. I just run over to the sink, get them nice and wet, and then you're gonna use that. It keeps the dough from sticking to your hands so much. You might still get some stickage, but it's gonna be a lot less messy for you. So I'm gonna wet my hands, and then we're gonna do some stretch and folds. All right, so what I'm gonna do, turn you guys down so you can actually see. Going to take one side of my bread, pull it up, and fold it over, okay? Then I'm turning my bowl. How many degrees is that? Quarter of a turn. And we're gonna do the same thing. Gonna grab this edge, stretch it up, and fold it over. Turn it again. Same thing. Stretch up this, and fold it over. And then one more time. Stretch and fold it over. Okay, so already you can see that our dough is starting to smooth out. Do you see that? So it's not shaggy anymore. And it's only gonna get more and more smooth as we keep doing these stretch and folds. Try not to get stuff all over my camera as I'm adjusting you guys around. Okay, then that's it for that step. Back to the microwave, cover it, warm place for 30 more minutes. We're gonna do this a total of 4 times for like an hour total. So, 2 hours total. So 30 minutes, stretch fold, 30 minutes, stretch fold, 30 minutes, stretch fold, 30 minutes, stretch fold. Was that 4 times? Yes. So back to the microwave, and then we're gonna do this again a few more times, and then we'll get to the next steps after that, which will involve shaping it, proofing it, the whole thing. We'll get there. Okay, we had to move locations just to have more workspace, but all of the stretching, folding, rising has happened for the first part. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to lay this out. Actually, I need to flour this surface first. We're gonna flour our surface, and then you're gonna lay out your dough. We're gonna cut it into 2 equal sized dough balls. And then we're gonna shape them and let those rise for 30 more minutes. Okay, so we're just going to flour the top of this. And then I'm using a dough scraper. You don't need to use this, but I'm just going to cut this. Doesn't have to be exact. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna flip these upside down. And fold the corners in on itself so that all of the floured parts are on the outside, if that makes sense. And then we're just going to make it into a nice little ball. And then we're gonna cover it with a towel and let it set for 30 more minutes. Okay, we are back, and we are going to put our bowls, or our bread, in our bowls / baskets. Okay, I know, I'm not gonna put you though. I gotta do this. Okay, hold it down. The dog really wants to be pet. Okay, this is, if you buy a sourdough starter kit, you might get some of these. They're called bannetons, I think is how you pronounce it. They're like wooden baskets. Don't love these, but I'm gonna use one of these, and then the other one I'm just gonna put in a bowl. You can do either one. I'm going to flour the tops of these dough rounds, and then we're gonna shape them to put them into these bowls. Okay, so we're just gonna go like this. And actually, I'm gonna do one with whole wheat because we'll see how that goes. Okay, and then you wanna flip it over and this does not have to be exact, you guys. I never put much thought into this. Okay, so it does say seam side up. I can't remember if I've ever done it that way. And then we're gonna go to this one. We're gonna flip it over. And this one's push. Okay, then This is your bulk ferment. Okay, so we're gonna cover these, put them in a warm area once again, and let them rise for 3 to 4 hours. I know, it's so much waiting, but gives you time to get a lot of stuff done. So I'm gonna stick these in my microwave covered. And actually I'm gonna put a little bit of flour on the top of this towel because it might get a little sticky as they rise. And then after this, we get to bake it. So we're almost there, guys, we're almost there. Okay, you guys, it's much later. We've changed clothes, it is dark outside, and we are getting ready to bake our first loaf. I'm not gonna lie, it's been so long, I feel like this should be, no? Okay, it's bouncing back. Okay, I need to just not top myself, but here's what she's looking like. This is the first time I've also proofed in a bowl versus the Banneton, so I'm letting the one in the Banneton proof for a little bit longer, but I just remembered, do I have parchment paper? I might not have any. Found it. Just kidding, we have it. I just pulled down a bunch of other stuff with it. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to tear out a piece of parchment paper, we're gonna flip the dough or the bread back on what was the top, so the seam side, so that's down, and then we're gonna score it with my handy dandy little tool. Now, backing up a little bit, I did not show the step. Put your Dutch oven in your oven at 400 degrees before you are ready to bake to preheat that Dutch oven. It just helps with the cooking. So after I plop this out on our parchment paper, I'm gonna score it with this little, I forget what this is called, a lancet, maybe? This little tool. Do you need this? No. Does it make scoring a heck of a lot easier? Yes. So definitely up to you. This just came in my sourdough starter kit that I ordered from Amazon, which I will link below. Actually, I don't think I mentioned that. It's really affordable and it comes with some tools that make it easier. Are they necessary? No. Again, we're keeping this simple, but do you need it? No. Does it make it easier? Yes, for sure. All right, parchment paper. Ripping off a piece, and let's show you how we score our bread. I haven't decided the design I'm gonna do today. We'll see. Okay, so we're gonna flop this guy over. Of course, it's like sticking to the bowl a little bit. Okay, here we are. So let's do a little curvy curve. And then 1 or 2, I don't know. I don't have like a particular design that I like do all the time. I'm always like scared to like cut it super deep. I don't know why. All right, that is good enough for me. So, hello, Sadie Sue. Yes, I know I'm not talking to you, believe it or not. I know. I know. You just gotta come say hi to the vlog. What do you say? Oh, we have big feelings tonight. We have big feelings. You got your stinky bone. Your stinky horn. Okay, can you go play? Okay, come on. Go play. Okay, now I'm going to carefully take my Dutch oven out of the oven. Sadie, I hear you. We're not talking to you. So I'm going to take my Dutch oven out of the oven and we're going to stick our bread in. do is for the first part of baking, we are going to leave the lid on. Yes, Sadie, I know. I know. Plop it down in there. And just remember, like, don't grab the lid without your hot pads. So we're gonna do that. And then, I know, Sadie, can you look out? Look out. Then we're gonna pop her back in. And so for the first half, we're gonna leave that lid on. And the second half, we'll take it off to really get it nice and golden brown on the top. Let me touch on scoring a little bit. People are like, what did you just do? So I cut those lines in it. Basically, that helps the steam release and it helps it rise. I've heard people say you don't have to do it, and it's historically it was like a way for bakers to brand their bread. So they would have a specific design they would do, and that would like be like their logo almost on their bread. So it can be an artistic expression or it can be functional. Take it as you will. I've seen people use scissors to do it. Sorry, I have a hair on my face. I can feel it. It's just a fun thing to get creative with if you want to. This tool does make it a lot easier, but test it out with scissors or try not scoring it. Maybe not on your first round, but you know, give it a shot. Okay, I actually need to double check how long this needs to bake for. I want to say it's like 20 minutes with the lid on and 20 minutes off. But I will put that on the screen right here with how long to bake it for. And then halfway through, we're going to take that lid off and let it finish with the lid off. And then we will have our first loaf. It's so crazy. It's literally an all day thing. Well, an all day and night thing, because obviously I started it last night, but it is almost 8 o'clock. My husband is actually in bed because he has to work at midnight. He has an overnight shift. So it's just me and the dogs baking some bread, but I'm excited to see how this turns out. Fingers crossed. I've only had one, knock on wood, I've only ever had one batch of sourdough that didn't turn out, and I think it was because I just didn't proof it enough, which is why I'm leaving the Bannatyne one to proof a little longer. But like I said, this is a pretty foolproof recipe as long as you follow directions and kind of know what to look for. So next up, got a loaf of sourdough. Okay, you guys, we did it. She's looking cute. Okay, here she is. I'm gonna spread her off this parchment paper. Okay, that's good. The thump on the bottom is good. Now I'm gonna let it rest for about 15 minutes. I don't even honestly really want to cut into it. I just realized we don't have any like spreadable butter. And Jonathan is already in bed for the night. I mean, he has to work in 3 hours, so do I do it for selfish reasons? Honestly, I have to show you guys, so I will cut into it. We'll see what the crumb is like. I honestly feel like it's probably not the best crumb. I'm gonna see how this next one proofed, if it got a little bit bigger, but one thing to note is because I had a newer sourdough starter, these may not like rise as much as if you keep feeding your starter down the road. So I'm not like super worried. Like, it's still gonna taste good, it's still gonna be fine, it's still like a great loaf, but just keep that in mind. If you are using a relatively new starter, it may not rise as well, just because it needs to strengthen up a little bit, you know, it's just a little baby. Sorry, this lighting is really bad, but we're gonna let this cool and then we'll cut into it in a little bit. All right, moment of truth, here we go. She's been sitting for about 15 minutes. You guys, I literally bought this knife specifically to cut bread. I don't know if that's normal or not. We're doing it. All right, she actually looks
pretty dang good on the inside. Oh my goodness. Okay, I don't cut it down the middle, but can you see the steam rolling off? Oh, she is pretty. You guys. Amazing. Amazing, amazing. Okay, she definitely could have risen a little bit, but I'm okay with these results. Guys, we did it. We made sourdough. After what? How long had it been? Almost a year. I'm actually going to pre-slice this so Jonathan can take some to work with him. I was gonna try and stay up to send him off, but the girl is not a late night girl, especially when I'm like bored. Like I can stay up if I'm like doing something. Like I guess I could edit a vlog. I've been working on one for a while, but I am just, I don't know, I'm just such a routine girl. I'm not big on staying up super late. Oh yeah, this is still very warm. So I'm actually gonna let this just cool a little bit, but let me show you this slice right here. I can never get the bottom to cut very well. So good to know, but look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, I'm gonna let her cool down a little more. It seems like such a waste not to even try this. But honestly, I'm just gonna take a little bite of this. I'm not really that hungry. My stomach sounds like I'm feeling a little weird today. I think it's just because of a medication that I took, but. So good. It's so crispy on the outside and like spongy and soft on the inside. So good. And it actually does have a pretty good sour flavor to it, which is surprising considering how new the starter was. So good. So freaking good. All right, you guys, there is my timer for loaf number 2. You know what? Let's just pull her out. Oh no, just kidding. I have to cook her for another 20 minutes. Just kidding. This is just for the taking the lid off. Let me get this taken off here. Set timer for 25 minutes. Okay, I will give a little disclaimer. I ended up cooking this loaf for about 25 minutes on the second round with the lid off. So a little bit longer. Just keep an eye on it for like how golden brown you like it. I like mine a little bit more done on the outside because I like that really crispy, crunchy crust. Sorry, my dog is wagging her tail against the cabinets. So I've cooked it a little longer than the recipe calls for, but Sadie, stop. Go lay down. Go. So just when you're baking your bread, just keep an eye on it. If you like it a little bit softer, cook it a little bit less. That's totally fine. As long as it's done in the middle, you're good to go. But that is a wrap on our sourdough video. This is so long. Kudos if you made it to the end. But hopefully this just goes to show you guys that like this is not hard. It just takes a little bit of patience. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something. If you have a variation of sourdough that you like, let me know in the comments. There are some different ways to make this. Like I said, sourdough is not necessarily an exact science. There's tons of variations, just like there are tons of kinds of cookies and cakes and whatever. There's different variations of sourdough. So I would love to hear what you do differently. I'm not an expert. I am not a professional. This is just my experience. I may have said some things wrong here and there, but hopefully you were able to learn something, and hopefully this gives you the encouragement to go make your own sourdough. So if you guys made it this long, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you guys very soon in another video. Bye guys.